Good afternoon, friends. We are going to be reading Peter Pan today. We're going to talk about wind and air because Peter Pan can fly. So we're going to talk about that. If you guys take any pictures doing any of our activities today, make sure that you send those to the library. We love seeing you guys doing all of our activities and just seeing how you guys are doing them at home. Maybe they look a little bit different than ours, so that's always fun to see. And if at any time we're going too fast in our video, just remember you can rewatch it as many times as you would like, and you can pause it whenever you need to for you to be able to do the activities in your own time. Okay? Peter Pan by Eugene Coco. There was a place, a faraway place, where the sun always shone, the sky was always blue, and no one grew old. This place was called Neverland, and it was where Peter Pan and Tinker Bell lived. Not so very far away, in the city of London, lived Wendy, John, and Michael Darling. Every night they would gather in the nursery to hear Wendy tell wonderful tales of Peter Pan's adventures with friendly Indians and nasty pirates in Neverland. One night, when Wendy was telling John and Michael a favorite Peter Pan story, Nana, their St. Bernard, started barking outside in the yard. Not a moment later, Peter Pan appeared with Tinker Bell. "I came to find my shadow," said Peter Pan. "Nana took it from me the other night as I was secretly listening to your stories." "Oh, I do hope it isn't rumpled," said Wendy, as she sewed the shadow back on. To Peter's body, John and Michael looked on in amazement. "I'm so glad you came back tonight, Peter," Wendy said. "You see, tonight's my last night in the nursery, because tomorrow I have to grow up." "But that means no more stories," cried Peter, "unless I take you all back to Neverland with me." Wendy, John, and Michael couldn't believe their ears. "That would be wonderful," they shouted. Peter Pan sprinkled some of Tinker Bell's pixie dust over the children and told them to think happy thoughts. "Now you can fly," said Peter. Suddenly, they were all soaring through the skies of London, heading toward Neverland. Oh, that would be neat to fly. Down below, they saw rainbows and waterfalls and mermaids singing in a lagoon. It was the most beautiful place they had ever seen. There were beaches and deep forests, and of course there was the Indian camp. Yes, this was indeed Neverland. "This way," called Peter Pan as Wendy, John, and Michael landed in one of the forests. He led them to the secret underground home where he lived with his good friends, the Lost Boys. John and Michael played with the boys while Peter Pan and Wendy went to visit the beautiful mermaids in the lagoon. It was there that Peter Pan spied the Indian chief's daughter, Tiger Lily. The evil Captain Hook and Mr. Smee had her tied up in a boat. Peter and Wendy could overhear the pirate demanding, "Tell me the hiding place of Peter Pan." But Tiger Lily wouldn't tell. "I have to save her," Peter told Wendy. They flew off together to Skull Rock, where Captain Hook had taken Tiger Lily. There, Peter challenged Captain Hook to a thrilling duel. Peter was so quick and brave that at last the nasty pirate landed in the water, only to be chased back to his ship by a ferocious crocodile. Peter rescued Tiger Lily and returned her to her father, the Indian chief. Captain Hook was very angry. "That cursed Peter Pan, I shall have my revenge against him once and for all," he cried. He captured Tinker Bell and forced her to show him where Peter Pan lived. Then he caged her and put her in a lantern. As Captain Hook's band of pirates approached Peter Pan's home, the Darlings and the Lost Boys were coming up from underground. One by one, they were captured and taken to the pirate ship. Peter Pan will save us, Wendy said bravely. But Captain Hook roared with wicked laughter. Ha! Pan will never be able to save you, he shouted. You will walk the plank. No one noticed as Tinker Bell escaped from the lantern. She flew as fast as she could to alert Peter Pan. Once Tinker Bell reached Peter Pan, he raced out to sea to rescue his friends. I've come to stop you once and for all, Captain Hook, cried Peter. This time you've gone too far. After another fierce duel, Peter Pan threw Hook and all the pirates overboard. Hook was chased away by the crocodile, and nobody cared to save him. There he is, swimming away from the crocodile. The Darlings thanked Peter for rescuing them. Could you tell me, sir, where we are sailing? Wendy asked. To London, Peter replied. Oh, said Wendy happily. Michael John, we're going home. Once again, Peter Pan sprinkled Tinker Bell's pixie dust over everyone, and Captain Hook's pirate ship was suddenly sailing through the skies of Neverland, heading back to the Darlings' home in London. The whole ship is flying back home. But before Peter Pan and Tinker Bell left again for Neverland, they made Wendy, John, and Michael promise never to forget them. And they never did. And that's the end of our story of Peter Pan, where we talked about him flying. So we're going to make our kites that can also fly. So your bag that you had gotten from the library, or all of your supplies that you need to make your kite, grab those materials with you now while we go to my friend Miss Marla to learn a little bit more.
Hello, boys and girls. Today we're talking about wind and air. When we talk about wind, if you remember in the story that you just heard about Peter Pan, the Darling children, Peter Pan, Tinker Bell, they all took off in the wind and they flew to Neverland. What are some other things you can think of that would blow in the wind, the wind can make fly? Did you ever think about leaves flying through the wind? And what about airplanes? I'm sure some of you flew on airplanes before. And we fly right through the wind when we're in an airplane. You might also think about the birds. The birds like to fly, and they fly right through the wind. Well, today we're going to make something else that flies in the wind. We're going to make a kite. In your brown bag, if you have it there in front of you, you'll find a supply list, and that tells you exactly what is in your bag. Plus, you'll also need to grab right away a ruler, pencil, and tape to make our kite today. You're also going to find a piece of paper that gives you in detail how to assemble your kite. So if we go a little bit too fast and you have trouble keeping up, you can follow along later with your paper, or you can re-watch the whole video again and follow along that way. Inside your bag, you should find a straw, a tube with some crepe paper on it, another little spool with some string on it. You'll have numerous stickers in there to decorate your kite with. You're going to have all kinds of stickers. And you'll also find a little tiny spool of tape, and you can use that to do your decorating. If you'd like to use markers, crayons, or whatever you have there at home to decorate with, that works too. So the first step to making our kite is we're going to take a brown piece of paper. And here at the library, we just used a piece of paper off the side of an old grocery bag. So we're going to take our brown piece of paper, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to just fold it in half. Crease it real good with your fingers. Now once you've got your crease in it, I want you to take your ruler, and we're going to just lay our ruler down on that folded edge, and we're going to use the width of the ruler, not the length, just the width. So we're going to just lay it right along the edge, and then with the width of that ruler, we're going to take our pencil and just draw a line clear across. We're going to flip it over, and we're going to do that same thing again. We're going to lay the ruler on the fold and just draw the length of the ruler on the piece of brown paper. Once we've got that done, I want you to lay your piece of brown paper facing you with the flaps facing you. The fold will be away from you. And we're going to just fold it on that line that we drew. So just fold your brown bag on that line and make another crease. Now it's going to look like this. We're going to flip it over, and on the other side, we're going to fold it on the line that we drew, and we're going to make a crease. And now we have something that looks like this. We have a fold up here on top, and we have two flaps. The next step, if you have a hole puncher at home, that would be a great tool to use, but I know a lot of you may not. So at this point in time, I'd like you to have an adult, if mommy or dad's with you, or any adult that might be there with you, and you might be able to take your scissors, and I want you to just put 3 holes right in the fold of your paper. So it's going to look like this now. You're going to have a paper with 3 holes in it. Doesn't matter where you put them. Just space them a little bit apart and make 3 holes. Now we're going to take our paper and we're going to flip it over so the folded side is on the bottom. And at this time we're going to take some tape and we're going to hold our fold together, and we're just going to put a piece of tape right across that fold. Only going to need about 3 pieces of tape to do this. We'll put 1 on each end and 1 right in the middle. And now what you've did is you've made your fold so that it sticks together. Okay? The end where we put our holes, you're going to want to pick up your straw now, and we're going to lay our straw across the top, about 1 inch from the edge, and we're going to take 3 more pieces of tape, and I'm going to put 1 in the middle so it will hold my straw in place for me, and you're going to just wrap that around your straw. Put 1 in the middle and 1 on each end. Now remember, boys and girls, if you're having trouble following along, you can either re-watch the video when you're done, or you have your instructions laying there right beside you that'll help out. So now our edges aren't flapping anymore. Now they're straight across. So this is what your project, your kite, should look like at this point. We're going to turn it over so our 3 holes are up. And now we're going to take our spool of string, and you can choose any hole you want, whichever one, and you're going to stick your string through the hole and then just tie it. And I'll show you what the holes are for a little bit later when we get ready to try to fly our kite, okay? But right now, just put it through one of your holes and tie it into a knot. So you have your string connected. After you connect your string, you're going to take your crepe paper. You can just unroll some of it, and it tears with your fingers. You can tear it, make it as long as you want. You can use every bit of it. You can use a little bit. You can use a bunch, whatever you want. Flip your kite over. So now the side with the straw is sticking up. Take your tail of crepe paper and just tape it right to the bottom edge of the kite. And now you've got something that looks like this. We have a tail, we have our string we're going to fly by, and then your straw is on the bottom. Okay? At this time, you're ready to do your decorating. But we're not going to take a lot of time to decorate right now. I'm going to go ahead and I want to show you how your kite's going to fly. Okay? If you're going to go outside, you're going to need lots of wind to fly your kite. But if you're going to be inside like we are today, we're going to use a fan. And the fan is going to be our wind. Now, if you choose to do this, you need to have mom or dad or an adult with you to run the fan. We don't want any boys and girls running the fan by themselves. You need to have an adult with you. But I'm going to show you now what will happen when we take our kite, and here's my completed kite that's been decorated and everything. And I'm going to turn my fan on and watch what happens to my kite. See it flying, boys and girls? It's moving just a little bit. Let's see what will happen if I turn my fan on a little bit faster. Let go of a little bit more string. There it goes. It's just soaring away. And now if I turn the fan on high, give it a little bit more string, it's going to really go. See it? Flying through the wind, boys and girls. Level your string. Pull it back up. The wind grabs it. And watch it fly. So our kite is flying just like Peter Pan, Tinker Bell, all of the darling children did in our story today. So remember what you can do with just a little bit of wind and some paper products. Okay? Now you will get to watch Miss Chris, and she's going to show us a little bit about air and what we can do with air.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the library. I'm going to introduce you to Curious George if you haven't met Curious George yet. This book was one of my Tyler grandson's favorite stories because Curious George always gets into trouble. So we're going to find out what happens when he visits the library. So I'm going to read you this book today, and then I have a few experiments we're going to do. Okay, let's do it this way. I think maybe you can see better. This is George. He was a good little monkey and always very curious. Today, George and his friend, the man with the yellow hat, were at the library. And that's where we are today. George had never been to the library before. Can you imagine that, boys and girls? If you haven't been to the library, you need to get in here. He had never seen so many books before either. Everywhere he looked, people were reading. I love to read. Some people read quietly to themselves, but in the children's room, the librarian was reading out loud, which is fine because they were having story hour. It was story hour. George loved stories, so he sat down with a group of children to listen. The librarian was reading the book about a bunny. George liked bunnies. Behind the librarian was a book about a dinosaur, and George liked dinosaurs even more. He hoped she would read it next. But next, the librarian read a book about a train. George tried to sit quietly and wait for the dinosaur book to be read. But sometimes it's hard for a little monkey to be patient. When the librarian started a story about jungle animals, George couldn't wait any longer. He had to see the dinosaur book, so he tiptoed closer. "Look, a monkey!" shouted a girl. The librarian put her finger to her lips. Shh, we must be quiet, so everyone can hear, she said nicely. But there's a monkey, said the boy. The librarian nodded and smiled. Mm-hmm, she agreed. When she finished reading the jungle story, the librarian reached for the dinosaur book. But where did it go? And where was George? Well, you guys can guess what happened. George was all ready to take the dinosaur book home and read it with his friend when another book caught his eye. This book was about trucks. George wanted to take it home too. And here was a book about elephants. George loved elephants, so he had to add that to the pile. George found so many good books, he soon had more than he could carry. He leaned against a shelf to rest. Squeak went the shelf. Shh, said a man. Squeak went the shelf again, and it moved. Why, it was really a shelf after all. George had found a special cart for carrying books. See that cart? We have several of those. Ours are gray in our library. What luck! Now George could carry all the books he wanted. He rolled the cart between the shelves and stacked up the books about boats and kites and baking cakes. He climbed higher to reach books about cranes and planes. At last, George had all the books he could handle. He couldn't wait to head home and start reading. And right in front of him was a ramp leading to the door. George was curious. Could he roll the cart all the way home? What an idea. Down the ramp George went. The cart rolled faster and faster. Stop! The librarian volunteer shouted. Come back here with my cart! But George was too excited to listen. The cart was picking up speed and George was having fun. Until crash! George and the cart ran smack into the shelf of encyclopedias. Books flew up in the air, and so did George. He landed in a big pile right between O and P. There he is. Look at that mess. Books everywhere. Oh no, moaned the volunteer when he saw the mess George had made. How am I going to put away all these books? I'd like to borrow this one, said a boy from Story Hour. I'll take this one, said a girl. With help from George and the children, the books were sorted in no time. Soon there was just a small pile of George's favorites left. Would you like to take those books home with you? The volunteer asked George. Then he took George to a special desk, helped him get his very own library card, which you can do that at our library. George was holding his brand new card when his friend arrived with a stack of books of his own. There you are, George, he said. I see you're all ready to check out. George and his friend gave their books to the librarian. She smiled when she saw George's pile. I was wondering where this dinosaur book went, she said. It's one of my favorites, too. The librarian stamped the books and handed them back to George. With his books under one arm, George waved goodbye to the volunteer and the librarian and the children from Story Hour. Come see us again, George, the librarian said, waving back. Enjoy your books. And there he went home, and the man with the yellow hat is reading Georgie's books. And, of course, he did come back to the library, and that's what we want you to do. Okay, George is so curious. We also had a book about kites that Marla just showed you about. There's a book about Curious George Flies a Kite. So there's a couple of books here that you can check out about Curious George, and we have a whole bunch more Curious George books. Well, I'm going to do a little science experiment with you, and it's called the Curiosity Lab, Blowing in the Wind. And this has a science concept. If wind can move things, do you think it can? I'm sure if you've ever experienced the wind, you can. This is from the pbskids.org, Curious George. So you can get out your bag and get your contents out. And I've got some of mine sitting up here. And you need to have this sheet of paper. Which objects move in the wind? You'll have two of them. These are the objects, and then here's the other one that you need to record with, okay? So we're going to get started. Let me put my Curious George mask on. My goodness, I about forgot. Okay, got to be Curious George. Okay, we're going to make some of these. These items are in your bag, And all you have to do, I've got a couple of them. One of them you just fold in a triangle. We're going to do a big one and a little one. Then we have the fan one, accordion fan, and you just fold it back and forth and back and forth. And fold it real good so it'll kind of stand up. And then I had a couple of cylinders that we're going to use today, okay? So then you need a paper and a pencil. Which objects did the wind move? And it's either going to be in the yes category or the no category. So we're going to find out what happens. So let's see how my wind making is doing today. I'm going to start with the little one first. Let's start out easy. And then we'll see how far I can blow this little one. Almost blew it off the table, so that was pretty good. What do you think is going to happen with the next one? Now that one you can record was a yes, because it did move, didn't it? This one, let's see what happens. Let's see if I can get going. I got to have more air for this one. Well, didn't do quite so good with that one. What do you think would make this one slow down? Stop and think about that and experiment with it, and then you can record it. That one did move, but just a little bit. This one we're going to do is just an accordion fan, and we're going to stand it up this way first and see what happens. Didn't go very far, did it? But at least I blew it down, so I guess that could be in the yes category. I'm going to turn it this way and see what happens. There again, didn't move too much, did it? Okay, let's try doing it this way and see what happens. It didn't move at all. So that's going to go in the no category. So just put your check mark or your X for that one. But you guys might be windier than me, so you might be able to get them to move. Okay? The next one, I thought we're going to do a couple of them. We'll see what happens here. Let's see what happens with the big one. I want to try that so I don't run out of air. Think I can get this one to move? There it went, disappeared. That one would definitely be a yes. Let's see what happens. They're a little bit different sizes, so you can experiment with that as well. So let's see what happens if I put it this direction. It just blows down, doesn't it? Didn't go too good, but it did move. Now what if that happens? Yeah, I bet you can already guess. That one's clear off the table. Let's see if I can get this one. It's a little bit smaller. Oh, and I got that one go clear off the table in one breath, so I'm doing pretty good. Well, have fun experimenting today with wind. And I noticed it's pretty windy out today, and it looks like it's going to rain. So you might want to pick a nice windy day to do your experiments with. And don't forget to come to the library and check out books and get a card, library card. See you later.
Okay, friends, we had so much fun today talking about Peter Pan and wind and air and kites and experiments all together. We just want to remind you of a couple more things before we log off today. Remember, there's a story hour for preschool age children on Tuesdays from 11 to 12. So if you want to join in for those are always fun. There's a supply list on Facebook. You gather your supplies up and then you watch the feed and join along. Our next preschool to first grade event is going to be July 17th. So be looking out for the sign-ups to get your kits a week ahead. Okay? You'll sign up, we'll make a kit, we'll make sure that your name is on it, and we'll stick it out on the foyer pickup tables for you. Also, June 30th at 1 o'clock, Jeff Nichols, he's a cartoon artist. He does really, really well with kids. He's going to be doing a Zoom meeting. So if you want to call and sign up and register for that, just call your library or come in and visit. We'll sign you up, and then you'll get an email with the Zoom password and code and things so that you can get on there and watch him do a really great job and follow along with him. You guys, if you took any pictures, please send them in. We like to see them, as I said before. And you guys all have a wonderful week. Bye.